Hello, Jordy Skipper here, and today's video, it's all about CO2 injection. I must admit, I was really a CO2 injection for years, and once you use it you think, what was I worried about? So as the thumbnail says, it's not as scary as what you think. So what I'm going to do today is set up a CO2 system and give you the basics and make it as easy as possible, step by step. No fancy jargon. I'm just going to set it up, keep it as basic as possible, and hopefully by the end of this video you are confident setting your CO2 injection system up. So hope you enjoy, guys, hope you find it of use, and if you do so, please give it a big thumbs up, and if you haven't subscribed already, please hit that subscribe button. The percentage of subscribers that watch my videos is like tiny. I mean, I'm talking about 15-16%. So there's lots of people watching my videos, but please just hit that subscribe button. So I know you hear it on all videos, you're saying, everyone's like, subscribe, hit that like button, but it is really important. So please hit that subscribe button if you haven't done so already. It really does help, and I really do appreciate it. So without further ado, let's crack on. I'm going to set this bad boy up and hopefully it helps you out. Enjoy, guys, see you soon. Okay, so here we have it, the actual pressurized CO2 cylinder and our regulator. So the idea is to get this pressurized CO2 from this bottle via the regulator into our aquariums. Why inject CO2? Basically all life forms are carbon based, so what we're going to do is provide the plants with more carbon. There is actually carbon dioxide within the tank anyways, because the livestock you'll have in there will be producing carbon dioxide, they'll be breathing out carbon dioxide. But we're not going to go too in depth, because in this video is just to give you the confidence to set this CO2 up, and that's what we're going to go with, so not too much science. The only thing you need to worry about is the thread. Just make sure the thread matches your regulator. Depending on your regulator and different countries, different regions, you can get different adapters which will change the thread, and so I wouldn't worry too much about that. We will be connecting this, but what I want to go through first is a little bit about the actual regulator itself. So first up, we've got a connection bolt, and if you see there's a plastic washer. Double check when you first buy your regulator, because these are sometimes separate and they might be separate in the box, so make sure that's on, and that needs to go between the actual regulator and the threading of the actual cylinder you're going to be using, so that's really important. All this gauge is the high pressure, how much CO2 is actually in this cylinder. That's all that is. Don't worry about red, it's nothing to worry about. All that is letting you know when the actual CO2 in the bottle is running low. Okay, so nothing to worry about. It's not red for danger. Maybe you should change the colour. Usually the pressure on these cylinders is around about 700 and 900 psi, so you'll just see that as soon as you open the cylinder up, that'll go up and it'll hit 700, 900. Next dial along, this is our working pressure, the lowered pressure. This can be controlled by this dial here. That takes the pressure up and down. But in a nutshell, high pressure, the pressure in the bottle. Lower pressure, that's the pressure we're going to be working with. Coming along, this is the main block with the solenoid. The solenoid is attached to a power source, and that'll just knock the CO2 on and off when needed. I do have 3 blocks on here. I wouldn't worry too much about that, because we're only going to be focusing on one. The only reason being, sometimes I run 2-3 tanks off the same bottle. That's why these are there, so don't worry about them. We're not using those, we'll just concentrate on the one. So the main block comes to the second block, the second manifold. We have our bubble counter, and if you see there's a dial on the bottom. That's what controls and really dials your CO2 in. And if once we fill this with water, it's acting as a bubble counter as well. So you see the amount of bubbles, and slight little adjustments using this dial will control that, which we'll go into more detail later down the line. So, not complicated. If I can explain it, anybody can. That's the truth. That's your CO2 regulator. This one is by a company called CO2 Art. I've had a couple of regulators and I think these are great. I've had no issues at all with them, and I think it's a really good company, CO2 Art. I'll leave a link in the description if you want to check it out. So what we're going to do now is get this bad boy connected to this. We're going to leave that pin in. We don't want to risk taking that pin out in case we accidentally push it and have CO2 all over the room, so we don't do that. There is a different style, which is a dial, so you just open and close, lefty loosey, righty tighty, that sort of thing. I'm using an adjustable spanner, adjustable wrench. CO2 out, sorry, it fell off. Yeah, doesn't matter, it's just for show. So we're going to connect this. Remember I was saying about the plastic washer? We're going to ensure that's there, and that's going to meet between the actual nut itself. Just ease that on, keep that nice and straight to the grips.
There you go, just keep that going.
Get that hand tight. Once it's tight enough, you can adjust this as well. So I usually, what I'll do, a little tip for you, I'll put it up there, so once I start tightening, it's going to like face where I want it to, towards me. So we'll just, don't go crazy with it, but you want it nice and tight. If it's not tight enough, you might get a small leak, which you'll probably hear, but just make sure it's nice and tight, and then you've got nothing to worry about. There you go. Take this pin out. I do apologise, I did forget one thing. This here, this is just like a safety release valve, so that once there's CO2 in the system, you pull this down and that'll get rid of any CO2 that's in the regulator. So I just got to open this valve, and there you go, that's there. We want to keep this down, so what I use is just like a little band. You can use elastic bands, you can use cable ties, tape, whatever you prefer. We'll just keep this down. Again, if you have one with an actual dial on top, no need to do that. I'll probably use some cable ties there when I've just got none handy, so I'll probably cable tie it, but that's held there and the pressure hasn't changed even though I've pressed down, so that's the pressure. So I was saying between 700 900 psi, that's gone to around about 800. So we've got that set up nice and tight with the washer. Remember, there's the high pressure, the pressure of the CO2 in the bottle. We're going to fill this with water. I find this the easiest way. Fill that up, put that back on. Nip it tight, doesn't have to be ridiculously tight. So we're going to attach the line. This is specific to CO2. It's not like your airline hosing, so I wouldn't buy airline hosing. Buy the specific hosing that is made for CO2 injection. So now we'll attach this. We'll put that on the little nipple. That's all we're on. Connect that. Again, just finger tight. That's good to go. And now the line is going to run to your aquarium via a diffuser. I'm a fan of the stainless steel, but you get them in glass, and glass is probably the most popular because it's barely visible in the tank. There is actual diffusers that go outside the tank. You've got inline diffusers. So we've just got a little U-bend there, which uses a stainless steel U-bend, connects your hosing with a few simple cuts, and this is attached, which will sit in the aquarium. And now what will happen, the CO2 will run through this line, and once you get through, it's actually dispersed in really fine mist bubbles via the ceramic disc there, and that's that basically. So I just thought I'd set it up here so you can see. So a bit of a refresher, we've actually attached it to the cylinder via this nut. Always remember the washer's on there to seal it up, so that's nice and tight. It's got to be really tight to make sure there's no CO2 leaking, escaping. And then we'll come along to the high pressure gauge, which is showing the contents of the actual cylinder, which is usually around about 700 900. We've got the low pressure gauge, which is our working pressure, which that'll change once we actually get it running properly. Coming through, we've got the main block there with the solenoid on. So the solenoid you would just plug in. So that's nothing fancy, just your normal bog standard household timer. You would attach that, set the time for what we want, and that's going to knock the CO2 on and off when you need it, because you don't want to waste the CO2. Keeping it simple, you want the CO2 running while the lights are on during photosynthesis. That's, as a rule of thumb, that's the main way to go. While I'm here, before I actually attach it to the actual aquarium, put it in the cabinet, I'm going to use a drop checker as well. This is the pH drop checker from Seachem. These are my favourite, I just love the size of them, they're a great size. We've got a CO2 indicator solution. We'll drop that in as per instructions, which is 20, I think it is.
1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8, 9, 10, 11, 12, 13, 14, 15, 16, 17, 18, 20.
Just give that a little click. Get the air bubbles out. Without complicating this, basically blue, that's showing low levels of CO2. If it was yellow, that's far too much. Lime green, green is ideal, is what you're looking for. The lime green is what most people look for. And when it turns lime green, once you pump the CO2 injection, you know you've got enough running in the tank. So without complicating that, that's the basics of a drop checker. Okay, I'll set my camera up under the cabinet and we'll get this linked up properly. See you soon. Okay, so that's everything under the cabinet, nice and neat. So what I'm going to do now is put a solenoid in. Red light indicates power on, which is great. This hasn't changed, so now we're going to adjust this. I usually take it about 40. If you're running more, it tends to need to be a bit higher, so you set it around about 50. But 40ish is what I usually go for, and I've had no issues with that. So once that's set, now we're going to dial it in. What I tend to do is just turn it up to get quite a few bubbles. That's it. So set it fairly high initially. And you should see them bubbles going. Sometimes the pressure can drop, so just be aware of that. But the key with CO2 is don't mess with it too much. Dial it in and come back the next day and see how it is. If the pressure's dropped, all you do is increase it slightly. So it's nothing to worry about. This might have dropped again. Just dial it in. This is too high at the moment, but I'm just waiting till the bubbles get through and then I'll show you the actual diffuser. So it'll be making its way to the tank now. Get your bubble counts, some say 2, 3, 4 bubbles per second. Basically I would set it less rather than too high, just in case you put it too high you don't want to danger your livestock if you've got livestock in the tank. All you want to do is initially get the CO2 into the tank, and once that's doing that, keep an eye on the drop checker. It does take time to get around the tank, so this is where the time comes in. So what we were saying earlier, you want it set for when the lights are on. What I do and what a lot of people do is set it beforehand. So I have mine on for an hour before the lights come on to let the CO2 build up in the tank, and it actually goes off an hour before the lights go off. So the CO2 that's in can be utilised. The light might blind you a bit. See how it's coming out, that's blasting out. But we'll control that now. So what we're going to do is adjust. When you initial set CO2, it is quite normal for it to drop the day after. But like I was saying, it's starting to drop there. See that slowed down. So we'll take it up to 40 again. That'll knock the bubble count up. But that's that set. I'm not going to mess too much. I'll come back to this later down the line, probably tomorrow, and I'll adjust it again. And usually once I adjust the next day, it'll stay that way. If it drops initially, don't panic, don't worry. It's quite normal. And there you go. We have CO2 diffusing into the aquarium. Not as scary as you think. Do you agree? Before we wrap up, there's one thing I haven't mentioned. I would fit to your CO2 line, I would always put a non-return valve in. It's always best to have it because you don't want water backtracking to the regulator. So yeah. Well, that's a wrap, guys. Whew, I'm sweating. I really hope you've enjoyed this video and it's been of some use, and give you that bit more confidence with CO2 injection. Because I was saying earlier in the video, I was the same. I was always really worried about using CO2 and shied away from it. And I don't know why, because it is really easy. Once you set it up once, that's it. You'll never worry again. If the video has been of some use to you, or you've enjoyed the video, please give it a big thumbs up. And I was saying earlier in the video, please subscribe. I need your subscribers. I'm sick of saying that. I know you'll be sick of hearing me saying that, and I'm sick of saying it. So thanks for watching, guys. Till next time, see you later.